Hi, so it's Michelle Last here from michellelast.co.uk, and I promised that I was going to share with you how I've created these backgrounds. I've made several cards just lately using this technique. I can't seem to stop using it. So this was one of the first ones that I did, and I'm going to show you how I created this background here. And I've also done the same on a panel here and just created a strip to add to the front of the card. This is just a variation of this here, but with a slightly different embossed effect on it. This again is a slight variation on this one. It looks different every time you do it depending on what ink colours you use, and then I've gone for a very different colour palette here just to show how versatile it is. So what we're going to do is you have to use watercolour paper. The reason you have to use watercolour paper is that it's absorbent and it absorbs water, and we're going to be using a lot of water and a lot of ink. So what I've done is I'm using the Stampin' Up Clear Block E, and I've cut my watercolour paper to be just slightly larger than the clear block, so that when I stamp it I'm going to end up with a nice frame of white around the outside. So what you need to do is you need to decide what sort of background you would like on your watercolour paper. So ink it up to create our background. So I'm going to use tones of green and blue, so for grass and sky. So I'm going to start with my lightest green, which is Pear Pizzazz, and I'm going to tap that across the bottom. Can just probably barely see that, but that's on the bottom of the block there. Then I'm going to add a little bit of a darker green. Can't really see that, but it is a little bit darker. And then I'm going to add, see if this works, a little stripe of Always Artichoke, which is a darker green, like that. Then I'm going to go Pool Party for the sky. Going to come all the way down, get a good covering of Pool Party, then a little bit of Lost Lagoon, and perhaps go around the outsides and add a little bit there, and then I'm going to add some Bermuda Bay, just to add a slightly different colour there. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold my clear block completely horizontal, because if I have it tipped whilst I'm spraying water on it, the drips are going to want to pull to the bottom, which is going to make all the blue come down into the green, and that's not what I want to happen. I've designed it so that this clear block, when I stamp it, I've got an even border around the outside. So when you stamp it, you want to be fairly sharp and fairly quick once you've sprayed it wet, and then just flip it over and get it down on your watercolour paper. So I'm just going to spray this now. It's actually 13 sprays I did there, fairly close. You can still got the colour separation, but you can see it's very wet. So very quickly, and being careful of my positioning, I'm going to press that down onto my watercolour paper. And what you want to do is press it down until, can you see the ink is sort of creeping into the corner until you've got the whole background covered in. If you do have any dry spots, it's because you've not sprayed it and wet it enough, and that's absolutely fine. What you can do is you can remove your clear block, put some more ink on, spray it again and redo it over the top. The only thing you've got to be careful about is make sure you're layering it on top of the previous stamped square area. So leave it on there to let the watercolour paper absorb all the wet and the ink, because it's really super absorbent. It's taking in all the colour, and then when you lift it off, you just need your kitchen towel ready to take off any drips or excess ink. So I'm just going to dab off the excess there. And now I need to dry it. I need to dry it because I'm going to heat emboss this now. Love that effect. That's a bit of like a stormy sky. This is one that I did earlier, not quite so intense. So this is lovely because it's kind of dark, and I want the white embossing I'm going to do in a moment to pop, so that will work really well. Let's just dab off the excess there. So I'm just going to dry it with my heat tool. So bear with me a second. Okay. Now my paper should be completely dry, which it is. And now what I need to do in Versamark is stamp my flower images all across the bottom. So what I'm going to try and do is get the stem below the bottom of the card. And which one shall I use? I think I'll do these three. I'm going to try and stamp these like this across my card, perhaps a little bit closer together, but not overlapping. So let's do the centre one first. So ink it up nicely with my Versamark and make sure, like I said, the stem is below the bottom of the card. So if I just remember that that's in the centre, it's really hard to see, but if I just remember it's in the centre, that should be good enough. And get this one on, and then do the next one. And now I'm going to sprinkle the white embossing powder, and it will stick to where the Versamark ink is. Just like magic. Now I do have a little bit of a catch here, which I don't want. So I've got this fantastic little brush. A makeup brush would do just as well. So you just want to remove any of the powder where you don't want it before you heat set it. Otherwise, it's once you heat set it, it's on there for good. So I don't know whether you can see that, but my image is all on there. Taken on any excess that I don't want. And now I'm going to heat set it. So excuse me while I heat set it again. Okay, so there we have the embossed images. Now what I'm going to do is colour the flowers and the leaves in. So if I've got I've got my Mossy Meadow marker here. So if I just colour in some of the leaf detail. I'm not going to be too precise about doing this because I'm actually going to spray over the top of this with water, which is going to make the colours blend, and it's going to give that a real watercolour effect. So I don't have to be too precise. I am going to try and go follow the stem down like that. And then I'm going to actually colour the flower in itself. So I'm going to go for this crushed curry colour and colour this in, my crushed curry marker. And of course the ink won't stick to the where I've heat embossed because it's a shiny surface and the ink won't adhere there. So I've just put a little bit of green at the bottom of the stem of the flower. So that's the yellow one. I think the middle one we're going to make, where's this? Watermelon Wonder. I'm going to colour this flower in watermelon. Again, I'm not being too precise. I'm going to spray it and I'm expecting the colour to bleed. So if I colour this in too precisely and then it bleeds and all goes outside the lines, I get really upset. I won't, but so don't be too precise because you're not expecting it to stay in the lines particularly. And then I might use a different colour green for the stem of this plant, just because the leaves are a bit bigger. Perhaps not quite such an intense green as the Mossy Meadow. So if I just go down here, and then if I just colour this last one in, what are we thinking? Should we go with a, should we do, I don't want to do a blue because we've got a blue background. Let's go with a wisteria. What colour? Yeah, let's go with the wisteria colour. So just colour the little flower heads in. Now you take as long as you need. This is your masterpiece. I'm trying to be quick for you guys, so you don't have to be watching this video for too long. I might have to just tip it up to the sunlight so I can see the daylight, I should say, so I can see where the flower heads are, because I can see in the embossing it highlights it quite nicely. And then I'm going to use a different green. Again, this one is garden green, and I'm going to colour my leaves in garden green. There we are. want to do some of my, this has got quite a few stems on the inside of the flower. Let's see if I can add a bit more colour. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it again with water. So if you want to use your kitchen towel again, you can. And I don't know if you can see, but it makes the colour move. And it hasn't made the colour move particularly on that red one, but it's made the colour move on the other elements. It's softened them and it's also blended them. So if I wanted that to be darker, I could make that darker by just going straight on the flower. You may be able to see that I've added some more little stems in between the large flower embossed images. I just felt that it was too plain, so rather than you watch me heat emboss again, I just repeated the process. I found a smaller stamp, re-stamped it in Versamark, heat embossed it with white embossing powder, and then I've coloured it in. And I also found that I sprayed it so many times that I actually washed out the background colour, so you can see that I added some more colour by sponging over the top, then colouring with markers. And at this point I have not sprayed any more water. I've just simply picked up a sponge and rubbed off any excess ink that will not have stuck to the heat embossing, and it just made the whole finished card much more vibrant, so you can make it toned down or as bright as you wish.